Up and welcome to this live edition of Couz's Corner, where we're here to talk about top shelf college sports news and analysis. Tonight, it's going to center around the news that we've been hearing the last several days. And we're going to talk about with my guest here, obviously, Daniel Gygax, who I was going to give a proper introduction to here in just a moment. But we're going to talk about, the Presidential Commission on College Sports. We're going to talk about the news that broke, but right before we came on air, we'll talk about that a little bit, about the college football playoff expansion potentially. And we'll talk about, are we seeing the makings of a super league here forming potentially? And we might even touch a little bit on the House settlement stuff if there's anything to talk about there that ties it all together. But my friend Daniel Gygax from the College Football Mafia Show is with me. Daniel, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Another fun day. And, slow news day again.
Yeah, boy, it's golly. It has been it's nuts. What's up? We got Nathan and Shaq in the house so far as the show gets started. Thank you both for joining. Let's just dive right in, Daniel. Actually, before I do that, real quick, I got to give a quick sponsor shout out, and then we'll get started. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right, thank you for being patient, letting me get through the housekeeping there. I also want to give another shout out to another sponsor, Appalachia Digital, the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. If you need a brand new website or get your site found on Google, go to appalachiadigital.com/Couz. All right, Daniel. Yeah, man. Let's go ahead and touch on the news, the breaking news that just came out while it's fresh on our minds here. Looks like the 4 power conference commissioners met today to discuss college football playoff expansion. And it looks like there is growing sentiment among the Big Ten and SEC for a 16-team model now versus the 14-team model. And it would be a 4 automatic qualifiers of 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 G5, and 3 at-large berths, right? Seems like we might be leaning that direction. What are your initial thoughts on that report from Ross Dellinger?
That's kind of chalk. It's what everybody's talked about for, about a year with the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the first round games are on campus, I'll be happy with it. I don't think, like I said, I wouldn't say breaking news because, like I said, it's what we've been talking about.
It's an update. It's an update. Yeah. I think the breaking news is that I don't know if anybody knew they were meeting, and I don't know. It seemed like 14 teams had the momentum.
Yeah.
Which I had a feeling all along it was going to go to 16, to be honest, because I just think it makes more sense. But and what are your thoughts on this? I think 16 is actually better for the Big 12 because I think having those 2 additional at-large berths gives them a chance to get a second or third team in this case. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree?
Yes, because by the time that you get the top 4 out of the Big Ten, top 4 out of the SEC, and then you start racking down a little bit, you're going to probably end up getting a third ACC and probably a third Big 12 team in. That's just the way that things will probably work.
Right. Agreed. I totally 100% agree with you. Shaq says, by the way, Shaq is a paid VIP member on the channel. Thank you, Shaq, for your support. He says, everyone make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Shaq. He also commented earlier that I missed. Oh, he was just agreeing with Nathan about the Pitt sucks. And yes, I think we can all agree on that one. And then we've got James Green in the house, another VIP member who says, Couz, let's go Mountaineers. Thank you, James. Appreciate you, brother. All right, we touched on that. Let's go ahead and talk about what the thumbnail's talking about, and that is this Presidential Commission on College Sports. I'm trying to get it all out, make sure I get it right. Donald Trump has reportedly decided he's going to do with Nick Saban being one of the co-chairs, and then Cody Campbell, who is a mega donor for Texas Tech. He's an oil/gas tycoon, apparently worth like over $4 billion. And he's been donating like gazillions to Texas Tech over the last few months. But he apparently is going to be a co-chair too of this commission. There's also been Congress. There's been 5 congressmen or 5 senators rather that have been kind of on both sides of the aisle. They've been trying to come up with a bill to try to fix this thing right before it gets. Try to get this thing back on the rails. This thing we call college athletics. So, just initially, what are your thoughts on this presidential commission? Do you good thing, bad thing? Will it work? Will it not work? Is it just a political grandstanding? What do you think it is?
Well, the thing is, there's not going to be any teeth. There's not going to be any like regulations that could come out of it. It's all advisory.
Mhm.
And let's say that the SEC sees what comes down the pipe and they say, nah, we'll keep it the way that things are. They can. That's a lot of these commissions are like that. They'll sit there and give suggestions and stuff like that, and you can completely ignore them just due to the fact that what backing does it have with college athletics? It's advisory.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great point. So I wonder if there's a couple of different ways you can look at it.
Yeah.
If whatever the committee or the commission, so let's say they come up with some ideas, ways that they think college sports should be fixed, do they then take those to the Congress and to the Senate? Again, I'm asking because I don't honestly know, and maybe you don't either. I don't know, but how does that whole thing work? I mean, how do you actually implement the ideas that come out of that commission?
You would have to go to the NCAA and the conference commissioners and say, hey, this is what we came up with. If you go to Congress, what could be wrote in a bill that's going to, quote, fix athletics? I mean, you could sit there and say, okay, the SEC can't do blank, blank, blank. It's not going to work that way. Or the Big Ten has to split hot dog money with the Big 12. You really can't write that into legislation. It's going to end up just being, I wouldn't say tossed out. It'll end up getting ignored.
Yeah.
You're going to you have to go way back on this. Teddy Roosevelt, I want to say it was 1904-05, had a commission on football because football was deadly at the time, and came up with how to fix football then.
Right.
And that's whenever the forward pass was introduced. And that was done because certain stadiums, mainly Harvard's, they couldn't widen out the field. I mean, forward pass still, they were still running the I formation and they weren't passing still at all because that's just the way that coaches ran things. They said, oh, that's neat that we have a forward pass. Hey, we're going to do this I formation play. And you might have 2 passes a game. I mean, like I said, that was 100, I want to say 1904. Somebody's going to probably end up saying I'm wrong on the year, but something like that.
No, you're close enough. I remember reading. Matter of fact, Cody Campbell that we mentioned earlier, he's written several pieces in the Federalist, and he actually mentioned that in one of those. So I had actually just read that this afternoon myself.
Yeah, I
educated myself because I was not aware of that story.
Yes,
I don't consider myself a historian, so that was news to me. H. Bar Farkle, a VIP member, says, unless there is legislation to force compliance, it's all just fluff.
Well, what can you write?
Exactly.
I mean, what can go into that bill saying Southeastern Conference, you have to do blank, or Big Ten has to do blank? And the problem is that we're just not only are we talking the 4 big brands or 4 conference big brands that we have, let's go next level down, and let's go next level down, and let's go next level down.
Yeah.
Is this all going to trickle down to affecting a West Coast conference, a Big West, a SWAC, a MEAC, Big South? Where do they fall in Division One athletics? Because they're all Division One, and they're all getting a slice of that pie from the basketball tournament. Now, granted, that's the way they do credits now, helps the smaller conferences, but will there be a trickle effect with anything written? We don't know. We don't know what they have planned.
Right. Yeah, and it's I really, to be honest with you, and I agree with H. Bart Farkle there. If Congress doesn't do something, I just don't know that this thing, because anything you do outside of some kind of bill or law, and even if legislation passes, if that legislation doesn't include some kind of antitrust exemption for the NCAA or the conferences or however you word it, I still think it's end up going to court. Don't you? A lot of stuff will anyway.
They've been after baseball's antitrust exemption for, I don't know, 40 years. What can be put in place can be taken away. Now, if you give the NCAA antitrust exemption, how are you going to do collective bargaining? Because students change left, right, and sideways with the way that they do the, like, NFL Players Association. They have a president that's full time, and then they have every team has a liaison. I mean, with the way transfer portals and graduation and everything else works, how are you going to do a collective bargaining agreement? Things get messy.
Right. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I would just soon go with an employment model. I think an employee model at some point is going to have to come into play here. If not, like you said, how do you collectively bargain with someone who's not an employee? Maybe you do maybe they become independent contractors, which they kind of are now, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. It's they're independent contractors that don't have a contract.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I'm going to place money on this, and you're going to see more of this. The University of Kentucky turned their athletics program into an LLC. I will place $1 that says by the middle of next year, over half of the Power Four schools have their athletics as an LLC.
I'm pretty confident West Virginia's moving in that direction already. They did.
It's been rumored.
They passed it. I've been trying to get somebody on my show from the West Virginia legislature.
Yeah.
They passed 2 bills this past session that related to this, to NIL and rules around college NIL stuff. I've got one guy who I've never been able to get a schedule worked out with, and the other ones won't return my messages. Not sure why you wouldn't want to come on a show and talk to your constituents who would vote for you, but none of them seem to care. It's actually a little frustrating. And I'm hoping at some point to get Ren Baker on, and he can explain it probably. But
you didn't beg him to come on the show last night.
Well, when I saw him, I said it's about time to get you back on the show, and he said, "Yep." So hopefully he'll come back on.
Yeah,
it's kind of usually around June or July is usually when we do it. So
that's whenever all the coaches hit the beach for a couple of weeks.
It slows down for everybody about that time. So yeah, he it was a funny story. I'm changing gears here, but he recognized me, and as I walked up, he was standing outside, and he said, "Hey, man," he said, "You've lost some weight." I said, "I'm trying to follow in your footsteps, man." But so he did recognize that I had, so Ren is the type of, I'm telling you, man, he is. You ever met someone who, no matter who he's talking to, he makes you feel like you're the most important person in the room.
Yep.
He's that guy. He remembers your name. He will remember the last time he saw you. He will remember who you were with. Like I can't, my brain does not work that well. I can't remember those types of things, man. He's an extremely high intelligent guy. with it, and he gets it, and he's got that it factor about him that he can work a room. He knows how to make people feel important, and it's a perfect job for him in his role as a fun. Now I know why he's such a good fundraiser.
Yeah,
that got Steve Ohio, Florida chiming in. He says whatever is proposed to the NC. I'm not, Steve. I don't know if I understand what you mean by NC. To be honest, it could be North Carolina. It could be national championship. I'm not sure. And then he says organizing all college athletes for collective bargaining is almost impossible. And that's fair.
I wouldn't say impossible there, but there's a lot of team movement. So let's say that you get a deal set up with, you would almost have to do it through the conferences.
Yep.
And let's say, I don't know, I'm going to pull up Texas Tech. Let's say Texas Tech turns over their entire roster. Coach leaves, everybody leaves, new AD, whatever. You're going to sit there and say, okay, who are we talking to get things voted on? And you have to wait 6 months before you get everything set up.
Right. I'm going to do a screen share here real quick, and we're going to talk about this Cody Campbell. I think it's intriguing that back to this commission before we got off track, back to this presidential commission. I think it's intriguing. Hey, Nick Saban makes sense, right? Because he's kind of been beating the drum that college athletics needs fixed for a while. He's a very popular, well-known person, has good relationships with a lot of people, at high levels. It makes sense. The Cody Campbell one kind of shocked me because he's a donor. Like, you wouldn't think a donor would be somebody they would choose. But then when I read the writings he's done, apparently Cody Campbell is somebody behind the scenes has been kind of fighting this battle himself to a degree. And he's done it with writing some papers, and I'm sure he's probably met with people behind the scenes, politicians and whatnot. But the fact that they let a donor be on this commission or co-chairs a little eyebrow raising, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
because
that's
you feel
an understatement.
Because you feel like he might have some hidden agendas here, right? But when you read the stuff he writes, in my opinion, he hits the nail on the head on a lot of things. Like he talks about, says the solution starts. Oh, I don't think. Hold on, let me make sure I'm sharing it here. I switched over to this new platform, man, and it doesn't always share the stuff like I want it to. Okay, it says the solution starts with the very obvious need to quickly apply a tourniquet that will establish authority for rules to be implemented and will allow for the enforcement of contracts. This probably comes in the form of an antitrust shield, like we just mentioned. Next, there must be a single set of rules and laws to govern college sports across the country, not a patchwork of 34 different state laws as we have today. Now who wouldn't agree with most of that?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, obviously, implementing it is different. But that just, when you see that, and when I read that, I'm thinking, okay, this guy might be okay to be on this commission. Then he talks about, talking about the Nico Iamaleava thing. He says, if he didn't go to practice, he probably didn't go to class either, right? He talks about getting the, what are we doing here? Yeah. This is professional sports. But he wants to make sure that they keep it on an amateur level, right? He says we need to need reform to reaffirm that student athletes must remain student athletes and not become employees. I don't know how you do that. Establishing this non-employee status will help to limit the cost burden. I guess you put it into legislation, but Title IX comes into play. There's so many. That's what makes it's hard to write these rules for college sports because you got Title IX implications. You don't have Title IX implications in the NFL or Major League Baseball or all these other entities, And Title IX could be the one thing that creates difficulty, so to speak, for putting any of these things into practice. What do you think?
Right at the end of the Biden administration, I want to say in like December, the Department of Ed came out with this memo saying, okay, this is how Title IX will work for athletics. with revenue sharing. Well, it was rescinded whenever Trump got into office, but the way
Right.
it was written, I mean, the legalese that was used there, it basically was all the lawyers here came up with a way to challenge revenue sharing at colleges. This is how you can do it under Title IX. So Title IX would have to get a rewrite through Congress.
Yeah. And then Campbell went on to write, he says, to permanently sustain the economic model, we must reimagine the organization and governance of college sports altogether. The professional sports leagues have found great success in building the brands of all of its franchises, not just those in the big markets. This has expanded the league's economic pie, created greater parity, and has massively increased viewership. College sports do not currently have the right to take the same approach, as they do not have protection under the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, as do the professional leagues. Now, Ted Cruz addressed that in the Senate the other day. He's looking at, hey, do we need to include college athletics in this act of 1961? But then he goes on to talk about how it would, by including the colleges in that, they would gain the right to pool and jointly market their media rights and install a media revenue distribution system that would significantly increase total revenue and would promote parity. The big and storied programs will continue to retain an advantage because of their massive ticket sales, donor support, and ability to monetize, yada, yada, yada. Finally, there must be some geographic sense made of conference alignment because the conferences must compete with each other for media deals. They're incentivized to organize into leagues that span multiple time zones. Basically, to sum it up, he thinks conferences need to be put back into geographic regions so that they don't have to travel across the country again. So this almost sounds to me, Daniel, like a couple things that have been proposed over the last year.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
Yep.
Called super leagues, doesn't it?
Yep. And here's where things get kind of messy whenever he talks about sharing revenue. Greg Sankey basically said no.
Correct.
And are you going to ask the Big Ten to say, hey, why don't you be nice and cut some money to the Big 12? Well, is the Big 12 going to cut money to Conference USA? Are they going to cut money to the MAC? Where's the AAC? Does the AAC cut money to the Sun Belt? I mean, things get kind of messy, and college athletics is set up completely different than the NFL. Now, let's look at Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, they do get a cut of national broadcast money for each team, but each team in each market have their own T deal. So you've got the Yes Network in New York.
Mm-hmm.
They're making a massive amount of money. How much money is the RSN in Milwaukee making? Not as much as New York.
Right.
Then you've got like a dual market, like down in Los Angeles. LA, you got Anaheim, you've got the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's two RSNs that you're carrying down there. Yes, the Dodgers are making more money, but the Angels, they get paid rather well just due to the fact that they're in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
That's where things are going to be difficult to sit there and say, okay, this conference is making blank. Do we blow up that conference and then come up with a new way to distribute everything? Well, the NFL does, but the only thing the NFL doesn't share is stadium revenue. Like I said, college football is baseball.
Do you think it would work? I'm sorry. Do you think it would work if they did it only for football? Do you think it would work?
The problem is, even with only with football, are you going to get an Ohio State, an Alabama, a Michigan to say, hey, we're going to cut your pay from what you could make and share it with WVU?
But why would they have to
It's
cut their pay? See, that's the part of it I don't necessarily agree with.
because whenever you sit there and look at averages, like the Big Ten, that contract that they have, it's like 60 some bucks. That is the average of every team, what their media value is. So let's say Ohio State has this value, Michigan has this value, Purdue has this value. So it's an average of everything. And that's where they sit there and say, okay, we know that Ohio State, Michigan gets that much blank, blank, blank number of viewers. Purdue, Indiana doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it averages out. And it gets complicated.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's in order for it to work, you would have to have private equity, have a capital involved, right? Because you've got to have an influx of money coming somewhere else. Because right now, the money pool is the money pool right now from the networks, right? It is what it
Yes.
is. It's not getting bigger. I mean, it might get bigger the next negotiation, but we're not there yet. To me, the only way it works is if you bring private equity or private capital in with a huge influx of money, and they basically tell everybody, and you lay the and I don't know what that number is. I've not sitting and done the math. It would be billions,
Yeah.
tens of billions,
Yes.
to be honest. But there are, if you get multiple private capital firms, you could probably make it work. And they say, okay, here's your model, and you still, you could even pay the bigger brands a little bit more, but it wouldn't be $50 million more, right? And maybe the number is enough to where they don't have to take a pay cut. That's what I'm thinking. The number would have to be astronomical. I get that. But maybe it could be astronomical. If you get Redbird and you get 2 or 3 more on board, and you get, all of a sudden you add Netflix, you add Amazon, you add, name them, Apple, I don't care, plus ESPN, plus Fox, plus TNT, everybody, CW, everybody's at the table. You've got enough networks at the table, enough streaming services. You get enough advertising partners on board that I just think to poo-poo the ad without knowing the numbers is premature. Because
the thing is, you're still looking at, are you going to throw away the conference model that we currently have?
You'd basically have to.
You would have to. You would have to sit there and say, hey, we're going to throw all this away, and then it would have to be football only, because you still have to have a place for your men's and women's soccer team. You're going to still have to have a place for your basketball. You're just going to have a place for everything else.
Yeah, agreed. And again, I don't think we're going to get to that, because I just don't. I think, like you said, Greg Sankey's never going to. It would have to be forced, basically, like Cody Campbell's talking about. It would have to be legislatively forced on them. What if you say that? What if you say, okay, Greg Sankey, okay, Tony Petitti, you two guys are leading it. Since you guys don't want to give up your power, you don't want to give up. Let's take the SEC and Big Ten and put everything under your 2 umbrellas. Put all 134 teams. Put the Super Leagues under their umbrella. Right? You still have the Super League.
Yeah, that still makes things kind of messy.
It does. It's going to be messy, and you'd have to divide it up in divisions and all these other things. And somebody, there's compromise. Everybody would have to compromise a little bit. But again, it may not have to be. If the money's big enough, it wouldn't have to be financially necessarily.
Because let's look at the value. Let's just go to the 2 schools in West Virginia.
Right.
What's the value of Marshall? What's the value of WVU? And we know that there's a significant gap between those 2 values. I mean, if you're going to talk every single FBS team, now you're talking, okay, well, what is the value of Boston College? What is the value of Coastal Carolina? What are they going to get paid? Who's going to get paid what is where things are going to get rather
correct.
messy.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. But it's already messy.
Oh yeah, it's.
You know what I
Uh,
mean?
I do want to answer this. What Farkle put up there
Yeah. Okay.
to say that everyone is thinking, but won't say it. The
Oh,
Big Ten and SEC are bullies
yeah.
and believe they can do whatever they want. They can't, and it's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to have any type of league set up. You're not going to be able to have a CFP that's of any value, significant value, without the Big Ten participation, without the SEC participation. Yeah, the ACC can do pretty good. The Big 12 can do pretty good, but they don't have that value that the SEC and Big 10 do.
Yep. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Speculation zone, whatever you want to call it.
Go for it.
Let's have a draft. SEC, Big Ten. You draft your teams one at a time. Start with the Power Four and all the way down to the G5. And at the end of it, you've got two conferences split up into division or two, whatever you call them, conferences, call them whatever you want, leagues. And again, I know that's a pie in the sky view. I get it. I'm just having fun. But there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. And there'll never be perfect parity. There never has been perfect parity because, like you were even talking about with the Yankee in Major League Baseball, the Yes Network's going to make a lot more. That's always going to exist. That's capitalism.
Yes.
We still live in a capitalistic society, and I'm a capitalist, right?
Yes.
That we can't expect it to be socialism here. We're not asking, but there has to be something. Whether it's and the House settlement. Let's talk about the House settlement is a good start, in my opinion, to doing that. If it gets codified and everybody is capped at that $20 million revenue share, now there will be outside NIL deals in addition to that will allow the Ohio States, now the Texas Techs and the BYUs, those schools to do more. I get that. But again, I don't think you should take that away because that is capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take away a player's value and the school's right to, or a company's right. If there's a company that wants to pay a guy to do an ad, you shouldn't be able to take that away. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
I don't think that I think there needs to be outside NIL, but the rev sharing money will at least get us to some semblance of closer parity. Do you agree with that?
It's like the salary cap that the NFL has.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball's got a luxury tax, so does the NBA. Hockey's a mess whenever it comes down to how things count on the cap and stuff like that. But you get but the best one is the hard cap that the NFL has. But the NFL is different. The NFL is 32 capitalists that talk like they're socialists. Because they share everything. They share everything. If I go out and buy a Steelers shirt, that money goes to the NFL office. The only time that it doesn't is whenever if you buy merch at the stadium, they keep that money. But let's say I go into the mall, pick up a shirt. Guess what? All 30 teams share in that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I didn't know it was that. I didn't know it was that bad. That what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't know they shared that. I didn't realize that even merch was part of the deal.
Merch is a part of the deal.
So if I buy Buffalo Bills shirt, that means the Kansas City Chiefs gets a piece of that revenue.
Well, yes, no, and sort of. Like I said,
now I'm pissed, Daniel. Thanks.
Now, if you go to NFL.com, you buy a shirt, and that money is split. Like I said, the only time it's not split is if it's at what they call team stores.
I got you.
That they get to keep that money.
I got you. But again, I mean, but you also see NFL players or any athlete doing commercials on the side, right?
Yes.
So college athletes should be allowed to do that, in my
How
opinion.
many commercials did Mahomes have?
Oh
It was
God,
like
tons.
he was in like every other commercial.
I got tired of looking at it, and I don't
Yeah.
even have anything. I don't have anything against Patrick Mahomes,
No, no, no.
other
If
than
he
the fact
wants,
he plays for the Chiefs. But
yeah, but
and I didn't used to hate the Chiefs until they started winning it every year.
yeah,
But
but you got to think of it this way: whenever it comes down to revenue, I mean, every single one of them can go out there and say, "Hey, buy this car." Who was it? Oh, I'm trying to remember. I want to say, yeah, it was Peyton Manning. He was hawking Buicks. I mean,
I remember that.
yeah, he can do that.
The eye patch just chimed in. He says, "How you doing, Couz? College football is done unless you're in the Big Ten or SEC. The media doesn't care. You don't care. The media has no. All the media cares about is making money for their investors, for their board, for their stakeholders. They don't care. I mean, that's not their job. But it's the schools and the conferences' job to care, at least to a degree. And it appears that the Big Ten and SEC don't. I mean, maybe they do, but I also am of the, like you mentioned earlier. Yes, he who has the goal makes the rules. The ACC and Big 12 handed them over the gold to a degree,
Yes.
at least not the gold necessarily, but the power in that
Yes.
college football playoff deal. Why they did that, Daniel, I just don't understand it, but it's already done, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as our friend Greg Flugar likes to say. But anyway, the House settlement. Let's get back to the House settlement. That's where I was going next. We were talking about the parity there. Do you think the latest update on that is it's around the roster limits? The judge ordered them, hey, you got to grandfather in these roster limits. They said no. Now they're saying, okay, we're going to do it on a volunteer basis. And the players who were cut can either be accepted back on the team or take the grandfather clause with them to another team. It's my understanding. Correct me if I'm missing any of the details. And what are your thoughts on that? And do you think it'll get codified based on that?
It's not exactly what Judge Wilkins wanted. Problem is, it's too late. Every school has already done their cuts. I mean, how many players out of WVU hit the portal whenever the portal opened after spring practice?
1 day after spring practice.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. I lost count. Yeah. So everybody was thinking that the July 1st date was a hard date. So they had to get 105 players. They could have no more than 105 players on the team. So they went ahead and they made room. Now the judge came in and said, okay, I don't like this. And she has every right to say that. Now, I was reading Midwinter, and I can't remember the other one that was talking about Russ Dellinger. They submitted, the NCAA submitted their paperwork today.
Right.
Will it? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to satisfy what Judge Wilkins wants.
I think
she was pretty adamant.
Yeah, she was.
That she wanted a grandfather system in, not a voluntary grandfather system. If you're going to do this, we wanted to make it to where this year will be blank, next year will be blank, something like that, to where it's tiered in.
Yeah. And my understanding, also, I think I read this today, that she's giving the objectors like a week, I think, or so.
May 14th.
Okay. To rebut, reply, comment, whatever, to this, the proposal. The fact that she's doing that makes me think she's leaning towards codifying it, or she would have maybe come out and flat out said no. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know how that kind of stuff works.
even though it's done, even though it's being done 25 miles away, I have no idea what she's thinking. I have no idea what anybody's thinking. She could have said today, but I think a lot of it is that she's going to let everything cycle through for the next week, and then if things change, she might say yes, she might say no. I mean, uh, Nate had two attorneys on
Mhm.
yesterday on his show. One of them said it was 50-50. The other one said 90% that she'll probably say no.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just
And
wonder, Daniel, if
yeah,
she says no,
everything falls apart.
it goes to hell in a handbasket, bro. Because these schools, they have been preparing for months as if it's going to. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
it was Ren Baker. I heard somebody make that comment that they've been preparing as if it is passing.
Yes. Everybody is. Everybody
Yeah.
everybody is.
So if
And
it doesn't, why? Why? I've been thinking this whole time. Surely to goodness, they know it's going to pass, because if they don't and they're already treating it as if it's going to, I hope to God they got a backup plan, because if they don't, dude,
what can you have for a backup plan? What is your backup
well, I
plan
guess there ain't
other
one,
than
because you just go to court,
yeah,
right? And then you lose, and you're going to be, and you think 20 million is a lot of money.
it's going to be 20, yeah, it's going to be $20 billion in the full settlement. It, for the that was the original lawsuit was 20 billion. They settled it down to 2 billion and change, and I can't
So
remember the
10
exact.
times the amount.
Yeah, 10 times the amount.
You,
If
you're talking about athletic departments potentially shutting down here.
well,
You're,
they're already it's happening now
and I don't
anyway.
mean to be. I'm not trying to be. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Pessimistic.
Well, pessimistic, but like, I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion. I
Yeah.
think that's actually realistic here, that you could see, especially I don't think you're going to see a lot of now. Power four schools might have to shut programs down, certain sports down. I don't think they're going to shut down their athletic departments, but some of these smaller schools will probably have to shut down their entire athletic department at that point,
Now,
potentially, or at least
okay.
drop down a level to where they don't like. Who was a school that announced a couple of weeks ago that dropped down a level? Can't remember who it was. They're dropping down to Division 2.
3.
Or was it Division 3? That's
Yeah,
even worse.
St. Francis in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that's who it
And
was.
their St. Francis in Brooklyn closed up all their athletics, I think, last year. Uh, Hartford in Connecticut, Hartford University in Connecticut dropped down to D3. Um, right out here, Sonoma State, they're a D2 school.
Mm-hmm.
They ended intercollegiate athletics. I mean, yeah, but then again, you got to look at the greater sum of higher education. I mean, here in California, $375 million is going to be taken out of the University of California and California State University system for this upcoming budget. So, where's I mean, you're going to start cutting departments, and that's the reason why Sonoma State went ahead and closed their
Mm-hmm.
athletics.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's a far fetched statement at all to think, because I mean, you're talking hundreds of millions here that some of these schools are going to be on the hook for. I mean, West Virginia's whole budget's $100 million a year. 20 million is
Uh-huh.
going to be tough for them. What if it turns out to be 40, 50, 60 million they got to pay a year?
They're
Well, they going
screwed.
and they're not the only one. I mean, obviously,
No,
you and I use them as an example because
yeah,
that's who we root for and that's who we follow and we know the most about. But there's going to be, I mean, the entire Big 12, most of the ACC, all the G5s. I mean, it would be, hyperbole is the word I was looking for earlier.
yeah.
I don't mean to be hyperbolic here, but
Mhm.
it could be a catastrophe. I
Now,
mean,
now we're just not talking. Now we're talking. Power four schools could probably weather a decent chunk of this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then, whenever you get to G5 schools, probably what, maybe a third would have to move down. Now, let's talk like a Big South. Let's talk a Big West. Let's
Yeah.
talk a SWAC. I'm throwing them out because they're smaller conferences that make no TV money. What happens to them? Does Big West go ahead and say, "Hey, we're dropping down to Division III"? It could happen.
You could, and I'm thinking, like you said, the Power Four, like West Virginia, for example, they could probably survive it, but they might have to drop a men's sport or two. Now and they won't be able to drop women's sports because of Title IX, right? So you might have to drop, men's tennis or golf or I'm just throwing out sports, whatever. And that's less scholarship opportunities for some of these students. I don't know, man. I don't even want to think about it. Let's just hope and pray that it gets codified, because if not, it could be really bad. Now, obviously the trial or court case would take months or years to get completed, I'm sure. But I don't know. It's just not a good situation if it doesn't. Epic Cool Man Nathan, thank you for the super chat. He says, "Let's go Mountaineers." Sucks. I wish I had I wish I had a sound machine. I'd give you the clap. Thank you for
Moen
that.
has.
Yeah, I got one, but I don't know how to use it, and it ain't worth the hassle to try it. To be perfectly honest, the stress of trying to figure it out ain't worth it. I'm not tech savvy like Moen, so I just say forget it. Are you tech savvy, Daniel?
Somewhat. I do want to answer Stanley Metz Jr.'s.
Yeah. I'm glad. I was going to talk good because I was going to bring that one up too. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, most schools are state owned, and to sit there and say that the Big Ten, SEC have ruined athletics, if it wasn't for their big contracts, let's say, would the Big 12 $31 million? They're getting 60. WVU is getting half. Let's say that their contract's only 40 million, then WVU would only get 20. I remember the last year that WVU was in the Big East, total amount paid was $10 million.
Right.
That was NCAA revenue share. That was media money. That was everything. The whole conference share was $10 million. So
that's why going to the Big 12 was such a big deal, because they knew they were going to make a lot more, right? They were making, at that time, it was going to be like 15, 20, something. I mean,
I want to say it was 22, but WVU had to take less. The first WVU and TCU, I think only were, I want to say they were only making like 15, 16 million bucks, but it was still a better paycheck than what they were getting before.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Stanley, I think what's frustrating to me about the SEC and the Big Ten, fairly or unfairly, is it's like they just never stop. They already have the most money, the most prestige, the most power, and it's like they just can't get enough of it. Like we can't get it, so let's go take, especially the Big Ten, who forms a friggin' alliance with two conferences, and then the whole time you're negotiating with two other teams behind closed doors. Why do that? That's just wrong, man. And in the SEC, you're sitting on the CFP committee with Bob Bowlesby, the Big 12 commissioner, who's on your side. By the way, Bowlesby and Sankey were like this. They were in agreement on the college football playoff expansion. The other two leagues, it was the ACC and the Big Ten, I think. Anyway, they didn't want it.
Yeah.
So, but yet Texas, and I understand Texas and Oklahoma called them. I get all that.
Yeah. So,
and you can't hardly say no to them, but I don't know. It feels like at some point, why can they not say, Sankey stands up and always talks about how he wants what's best for the sport, wants what's best for college athletics, but the actions don't follow that.
No. He wants what's best for the SEC.
Right. And I get it, because but the SEC presidents and the Big Ten presidents are driving the bus here. And it's like they're the ones we can blame here, and they don't care. I mean, I don't know, man. It's just, and I've heard Greg talk about a lot of those presidents aren't sports people; they're academia.
Yeah,
So they want to be tied in the conferences with like institutions, right?
exactly.
You
And
know, they want to say I'm hanging. You know, if you're Rutgers or you're Purdue, you want to be able to say, yeah, we got the USC president. You know, we get to sip wine with him or whatever they do,
play
eat
golf.
cheese, play golf, all that stuff. Yeah, that people at that level do,
Yeah.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't go out in the next breath and say we want what's best for. Now, I'll give Tony Petitti credit. I don't think I've ever heard him say that.
No, Petiti does not say anything.
I know that's probably the
He's
best way to play it because every time
yeah,
Sankey opens his mouth, crap rolls out of it.
yeah.
Um, but anyway,
Sankey is very vocal, and he's not afraid of a TV camera. Petiti,
no,
you don't hear anything from him.
yeah, and H. Bar Farkle, man, I don't want to go to say it's amoral. I will say it's greedy to a degree, and it's definitely not out for the betterment of the whole pie, the whole college athletics landscape for sure. They're not thinking, but I'm gonna flip the coin over. The people who filed these lawsuits, I don't think had the betterment of other people in mind either. Because look what we were just talking about a minute ago, Dan. I mean, Daniel. Look,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about if this doesn't get codified, we could see teams drop, and we're already seeing teams drop athletic programs, right?
Yeah.
Look at the student athletes who might be missing out on opportunities because of that.
Oh yeah.
Do you
yeah.
think the people who filed those lawsuits thought that through?
I can't remember the number. Somebody said 3,000 had to get cut from football. Somebody said 5,000. I don't know the exact number. Just for what people that left in April that got cut,
Right.
knowing that it's going to be 105 players that you're going to have on your team. They probably didn't think that at the time because the way that whenever everything was filed, these scholarship limits were not or part of the original filing. They were just wanting back pay. And they were wanting pay for the athletes on further out.
Right.
The scholarship limits came in to kind of say, hey, we don't want some team with 200 scholarships and another one that can only afford like 80. We're going to cap it at 105 for
Everybody.
FBS.
Yeah.
I can't remember what FCS is off the top of my head. I saw it somewhere and I can't remember it, but it's a lower amount. But the thing is, you can't have a walk-on, and walk-ons made WV.
Yeah. Rich Rods himself was a walk-on. He told that
Yes,
story,
he
by the
was.
way, at the Caravan about the kid.
I've heard the story 100 times.
His defensive backs coach, he said he was the meanest man I ever met in my life. He said, but it worked out good for me. He said, because I was like fifth on the depth chart. He said, and everybody ahead of me, he said the DB coach was so mean, everybody ahead of me quit. So I ended up being a starter.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like Hudson Clement, everybody loved him. Well, nobody loves him now, but everybody loved him last season.
Yeah.
He was a walk-on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Owen
just
Schmidt
how things work.
was a
Yeah,
walk-on.
Owen Schmidt came from
Wisconsin
Whitewater,
maybe?
Yeah. Division III.
Yep. Yeah, he told that story because Owen was actually there last night. And so Rich told the story about how he power cleaned 325 10 times and threw the 10th one over his head.
Yeah.
That's when they knew they had something special.
Yeah. He was on the one with Jed Renning.
Hang cleaned. He was hang cleaning 325, and then he power pressed the last one.
Yeah. He does the On the Gun podcast on occasion with Jed Drenning, and he's talked about the days up in Wisconsin and the night and day difference between being at Division III and being at a big time Division I, just due to the fact that you actually get meals on time.
Right.
You're on the road, you get fed. You don't get fed all that well in
Yeah,
Division Three.
but do you think? I mean, if do you think that the people that filed the former student athletes and the lawyers that filed these lawsuits,
Yeah.
if they could have foreseen the destruction this would cause, do you think they still would have done?
I don't know. Talk about the.
I mean I know that's a question nobody knows the answer to but them, but I mean we want to sit here and call the conferences greedy,
Yeah.
and we want to call were they not being a little bit greedy?
Yeah. No, you got to think about the people that did the original NIL lawsuit. Only thing they were asking for is to have, hey, what was it? I'm trying to remember one of the guy's names. He was at San
O'Bannon.
Diego.
O'Bannon was one of them. Wasn't he? Wasn't O'Bannon from
O'Bannon was
UCL?
one of them.
Yeah.
But one of the people on that list was a guy that was at San Diego State, and he was a kicker, and he had a YouTube channel, and he was making a little bit of money off it. Not a lot, but he had to get rid of that channel because the NCAA said you can't do that because it's a second job. And it's one of those, he was a part of that lawsuit. And that's where the whole NIL came from. Hey, you are restraining our right to go out and do commercial entities.
Yeah.
And that's flipped on its head. That's flipped on its head big time. That was 4 years ago whenever that was approved.
And I have no issue with that one.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. That one to me
I don't either.
But the ones I'm talking about are the ones that led to this house deal, the house suit and the ones attached to it where they're wanting back pay. I just think that's a little much to be asking. I don't know, man. I mean, look at all the millions of athletes, or at least hundreds of thousands of college athletes before them. They never asked for back pay. I don't know. It's just for, maybe I don't know. Some people would love to have a college scholarship. You know what I mean? I don't know. I get frustrated. I just feel like there's a lot of people with their hands out in this situation, man. And I think if we're going to point fingers, which I have at the conferences and the commissioners and that we ought to also point the fingers at the people on the other side of it, because they're as guilty, in my opinion.
If you want to see a large number, I'm trying to remember who had it. I can't remember where I saw it at. I don't think it was Midwinter, but somebody had the breakdown of what the attorneys will make off the $2 billion settlement. And it was somewhere around $400 million bucks.
Yeah.
Just because that's 20%. The attorneys get 20%. That's a lot of cash.
It is. And I'm not bad mouthing attorneys either.
No. Because
I got one sponsor here. I'm not that dumb.
No. Because the thing is, if the thing went sideways, they could put in thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, and let's say that they get nothing out of it. It happens all the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they're doing their job, right?
Yes.
But and I don't know, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at any particular. But it's the former student athletes, the attorneys, the leagues. Everybody's got their hand out, right? Everybody's got their hand out, and it wasn't meant to be that way. It was never meant to be that way. It was meant to give people an opportunity to play a sport, and in the process, get an education, learn life lessons, and it's turned into absolute greed at the end of the day.
I just forgot the guy's name. The coach there at Oklahoma State, Gundy.
Yep.
Gundy. I remember Gundy. What was it? 2 years ago, said, "Hey, don't come to me and ask for a raise. I don't handle the money." Yeah. I mean,
well, have you heard what Rich Rod said? Rich Rod said, I'd never want to talk to another agent. I'd rather put a stick in my eye.
Yeah.
It is not. So they hired a GM to handle that now, but
yeah,
these guys do not. That's not. They want to coach ball, man. They want to watch tape, coach ball, evaluate players, and go win, and go play ball games. Yeah. And they're been having to do so many things that, and Ren Baker even addressed that last night. He was like, these coaches, He said that their job changes every single day. Every single day they've got something new they have to deal with. And he said it's a tough job now. Now they get paid good for it, most of them, but
yeah.
And he made a funny joke. We were talking about attorneys. He said he was talking about the money explosion that's happening in college sports. And he said, we got any attorneys in the room? And of course, a few people raised their hand. And he said, no offense to you, but he said, anytime there's an explosion of money, there's an explosion of lawyers. And then he said, no offense, I like money too. I got 3 women at home that like to spend it.
Yeah.
And they all got a laugh out of it.
Yeah.
They weren't offended at all. But because, they knew he was just making a joke. But, when we were talking about attorneys, it made me think of that. But anyway, the eye patch says greed is good, Gordon Gecko.
Yep.
Thank you, eye patch. That was timely. Russell Snyder in the house. He says, I just watched a video claiming the Texas football roster alone will cost $35 to $40 million. I know the university isn't paying all of it, but it shows the kind of money the top programs spend. Yeah. Well, Ohio State's about $230 million is their budget, ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia's 106.
Yeah. But you got to look at it. If you've got a big donor, like they're Texas Tech, A&M. I remember A&M, they were getting recruits left, right, and sideways. Granted, they weren't winning with them, but they had top 5 recruiting classes because they just could outspend everybody. I'm going to pick on BYU. Ryan Smith has the money to go out there and spend it. And you're not going to sit there and tell those kids to not take the money. You're not going to tell Ryan Smith not to spend it because it's his money. He can spend it however he wants to.
Yeah, it is. And so, Daniel, speaking of BYU.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a minute because I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody else to get their perspective. And I haven't followed this story very close. I want to talk to Nathan in Wild Ute on this too.
Don't talk to you. He will absolutely bash BYU at every second.
And I'll probably I want to have side conversations with
you.
Yeah. Okay, first. To get each side's perspective as an outsider. Do you think BYU is poaching players, or do you think it's just strictly this guy's got a lot of money?
I don't think that they're poaching. I do not think
illegally poaching. Let me.
I do not think that they're interfering with players.
Okay.
They are going out there because these players are already in the portal. They're going out there and say, hey, we want you to play here in Provo. This is what we can offer you. And like I said, Ryan Smith, he's got the money. I mean, he just bought a hockey team. Is
that the new Utah hockey team? Is that the guy?
He bought that from Arizona.
Okay. So I don't watch hockey, so I'm totally out of the loop on
that. He spent like $1 billion change, and I can't remember the exact amount.
Cow. And he's a BYU donor.
Yeah, he's a BYU grad. Yes.
Here's what I don't know. Where has Cody Campbell and this Smith guy and all these other people been the last 3 years?
Well, Ryan Smith has been spending money on BYU athletics left, right, and sideways. Like the arena was just upgraded there, and Ryan Smith gave that money for the arena. There's another guy, Miller, and I can't remember his first name. He was one of the big BYU donors. The arena there at BYU, probably one of the nicest college arenas I've ever been in. Guess who it's named after? Marriott. So guess who's cutting checks? The Marriott Corporation. That's not a naming rights deal. That's because the guy that set up the Marriott Hotel Corporation cut the original check to build the arena. So they've got a lot of big money donors there at BYU.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just amazing. You got all these teams that they haven't been spending this kind of money before. I think what they're doing is, Daniel, is with this house settlement coming down the pipeline, they know that they're going to be, if it passes, there's going to be more scrutiny put on NIL spending, right? They're going to try to, anything above $600, I think it is, has to be scrutinized or put through, has to be approved or whatever.
It has to go through
clearinghouse. The clearinghouse, I think is what they call it. So they're trying to get all the money. They're trying to spend it all now. up
Yes.
front before they get. I think that's what's happening, and it's legal. I mean,
Yes, it is.
it's legal. And I was on a Spaces the other night, and somebody asked me, "Do I think you BYU's poaching?" I said, "Everybody's poaching."
I don't think that they're
But
doing
well,
anything
but
worse than
it
anybody
depends on what
else.
you call poach. That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. Everybody's doing it, and it doesn't. And it may not even be illegal because it doesn't have to be the coach talking to you. It can be Joe Blow down the street who happens to be friends with this player's dad, or
Hmm.
it could be a high school coach, or it could be an agent. It could be anybody,
Most of these
and
players
it's
have
not
agents.
illegal. There's nothing illegal.
No.
Maybe an agent. I don't know. An agent to me would be crossing the line, but it don't. It could even be a parent. Maybe I don't know. The problem is the rules on that need to be a little tighter, probably.
The rule just says you can't talk to the player. You can talk to their agent.
See, and I
Yeah.
see to me the rule's too loose on that.
Yeah,
Right?
it is. I didn't say that. I didn't say that it was a tight rule.
I know, but you're right. But if you're not doing those kind of things, you have no chance to compete.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to get your take on it because I know you do shows and you talk to those guys a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to talk to those guys about it. I've just been super busy lately, but I do want to get those guys and have separate side conversations.
Like
I
a lot
hope
of this.
I hope your all show survives it.
Yeah, a lot of the complaining was done by Utah fans.
Right.
And of course, they're going to complain about everything that happens in Provo. It's been that way. It would be like if Pitt ended up getting a player from WVU, or if WVU got a player off of Pitt.
Yeah.
Guess what? Everybody's going to sit there and say, okay, how did that player go to Pitt or WVU or BYU or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so like I said, it's still the Wild West. There's anytime the NCAA tries to put a rule up lately, it goes into court and they lose.
Yep.
They lose bad. I mean,
so then it goes to the other ditch. You go from one ditch to the other ditch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And this house settlement, hopefully, now bagmen are going to come back. People's teams are still going. But if that stuff's never going to stop.
It hasn't.
It's not going to stop. It never will because it's too competitive out there.
Exactly.
And these people, we love our college sports too much. And I mean, if I had a ton of money, I guarantee you I'd be spending a lot of it on it if I could. I mean, I'd give players, massive NIL deals and stuff if I was a billionaire or a multimillionaire. So anyway, well, Daniel, man, it's been fun. Real quick, let everybody know where to find you on your show.
College Football Mafia. I will be on tomorrow night with Moen and Wild Ute for the big Freaky Friday show.
Sounds good. And you can find him on X as well at the other Gygax, Gygax, as you see on the screen.
Yep.
You check him out on X. You can interact with him there, or if you may still call it Twitter. I have trained myself to call it X now because that's actually what it is.
I don't think Elon will mind as long as he gets the money.
Hey, as long as he's got the checks rolling in and the government ain't spending too much money, he's happy. All right.
Yep.
I got no negative comments yet about my thumbnail, so I guess all is good.
Hey, that's good.
But we will see where things go with this presidential commission on college sports. Does it amount to anything? Does anything come of it? We will see in time. We will continue to follow this. I will talk here on the channel as much as I can. My main focus, though, is what's going on with the West Virginia Mountaineers and in and around that program with all the transfers in and out and whatnot. But I am still trying to keep up with what's going on in the world of college sports. So keep it here. We'll keep you abreast of it the best we can. Thanks to Daniel for coming on the show. Another shout out to our sponsors, Cats, Counter, Stone Street, and Appalachia Digital. Thanks to them for helping me keep the lights on. Go check out wvsportschat.com, please. Check out the articles over there. Everyone have a good night. God bless, and Q Country Roads.